Welcome to our OSLC Connect for Jira training. I'm Robert Belarja. I'm going to walk you through some of the basics of configuring and setting up your OSLC Connect for Jira with IBM ELM. So our first target here is creating repository connections. So these are the friends that we talk about in OSLC. So a few things for us to be able to take a look at. First of all, what's the goal of friending? The goal of friending here is to create a secure relationship between two apps. So this can be from Jira to one of the ELM tools or vice versa. And the idea here is that now we can have a secure, authenticated, and authorized way to be able to embed content securely. So this way, when you're within the IBM ELM tools, you can see Jira content, and when you're in the Jira tools, you can see IBM content. Always authorized connections to be able to make sure that your user ID is one being used to be able to present that information, and all of your permission models are still being applied by those tools. Now, behind the scenes, we'll see some of the OAuth 1 configurations going on in terms of when we set up these friends and consumers. And you'll see some delegated authentication when we go and actually utilize these connections. So when we go to authorize to be able to see content, you'll see some user prompts and things like that. So the important terms for us to be able to pay attention to that are consistent across tools. Friends, these are the outbound server relationships. So if I'm in Jira, you'll see friends out to my IBM tools. And when we're in the IBM tools, we'll see relationships back into Jira. Consumers, those are the inbound relationships, and those are the things that we need to approve. So me as a server, I need to be able to make sure that not only somebody wants to talk to me, I'm going to allow them to be able to talk to us, and that's called approving that friend relationship as a consumer. And with a few of these connections, we'll see something called the functional user. Basically, this is often a service account that's used to have permission to be able to see artifacts and allow you to have access to information. We'll use that sometimes in reporting for the IBM tools. And then root services. This is actually a directory service, so we'll show you a little bit of that. It's an XML file. Tells some details that are done during discovery. When I create a connection between one entity to another, I'm going to point to its root services document, and that's going to tell me a lot of details about what the OAuth connection points are, what are the different domains that I support, is it change management, quality management, things like that. So it's a way for us to be able to have flexible configurations between the tools, and they can do their own discovery. So when we're dealing with IBM and the ELM suite, it really depends what sort of features we want to have to be able to make the connections that make sense. If we're doing a standard configuration, typically we're going to want to make a connection between Jira and Doors Next, RM, ATM, which is QM, and CCM, Engineering Workflow Management. We're going to make those basic application connections. So you'll see 3 connections. There's a few more types of things that we might make some decisions on. If we want to do reporting, we're going to make a connection from LQE, which is basically our reporting index, as well as Realm to be able to do engineering insights reports. And then if we happen to be using global configuration, you also see some connections to GC, as well as LDX, which is our discovery index. We have some visuals here. You'll be able to go back and take a look at them. But basically, we're going to see from Jira, I can create relationships to 4 different applications, or I will, if I want to have a fully configured environment. And we'll talk a little bit about how we go through it. What we'll see here in this diagram is how I'm going to make the connections to each of those tools and where I'm going to approve that consumer relationship, because it will be a little bit different. We'll do CCM and DNG live in the demonstration, because you'll see in CCM, when I make a connection to CCM, I approve it in CCM. When I make a connection to Doors Next, I actually approve it in JTS. So it gives you a little bit of a feel there. From IBM, there's lots of different applications, so there'll be lots of different connections back to Jira. So this gives you a little bit of hint. You'll probably want to pause the screen, go back through this, but these are the types of connections you want to have. LQE and LDX tend to be a little bit different. And we'll walk through how we go ahead and do that, and I'll give an example of that as we go through the demonstration. So with that, let's go ahead and show this live, give you a good feel of what we're trying to do here, and how to be able to do that live within your own environment. So let's start off in Jira. So I'm actually in the admin screens here. You'll be able to see OSLC Connect here. You'll see I already have some connections available that I'm going to go ahead and utilize and have access to. And you'll see actually I have multiple IBM systems, 606 system. I have a couple connections to 702, but let's go ahead and create a couple more to give you an example of what we want to do. So if I want to create a connection to a friend, I need to have directions to its root services document. So think about that as the point that will have discovery. So I can go ahead and register a new friend here. I'm going to actually create my 702 CCM connection. I need to put in a root services URI. I can go ahead and put this in. I'm going to create a provisional. Basically, this is going to automatically generate a key for me. And then I need to have a secret. Usually we just keep this something simple. It's up to you. Occasionally you need to share this with the IBM ELM admin, because you as the Jira admin can point to the IBM tools, but oftentimes you'll have the IBM admin actually be the one who approves it on their side. So I can go ahead and register a friend. Basically, this is going to create some web traffic out over there. It's going to go connection to that. It's going to create a provisional key. It's giving me a hint of what that is there, and tells me that I need to go grant access to that provisional key. So as the IBM admin, you'll see something similar over here. So this is in CCM on the IBM side. You'll see consumers. This is my inbound requests. Let me go ahead and refresh this thing. I just had a new friend request here. And we'll be able to see, should be a provisional, and there we have. So this is a provisional coming in. It's that same provisional ID that we had before, and it's my responsibility to approve that. So there's a couple things that I'll show you here to help you understand. So if I go ahead and do a refresh here, I'm going to go ahead and see that I'm rejecting the key here because I haven't actually approved that within ELM. So this will give you a hint on how to be able to debug a connection. If I go over here, set this to approve, save this, it's now going to be part of approved. If I refresh the screen, we'll actually see it down here in the authorized keys. And there we have it in the authorized keys. And the next time I came over here and looked at my friends here, I can refresh this, and you're going to be able to see that we're okay and we actually have that connection all set. So now this means that I can make and create a relationship between an artifact in my Jira system and engineering workflow management. Now, we talked about having 4 connections outbound from Jira. The other one is to requirements management because I also have GC and QM already here. So let me show you a couple things here so that you understand both what you might see of issues here, what you might see in terms of behaviors that you want to pay attention for. So in this case, I want to create a relationship to, let's see here, make sure I have my naming convention right. So it's the DNG, my 702 system, and then I need my URL. So the easiest thing to pay attention to in terms of the standard URLs for the IBM tools is we're going to look at the base URL for the tool and then root services. Sometimes when we're going ahead and typing this information in, we might make a mistake. We might have an extra space in here. We do try to help you out there. So if I had just root service, common mistyped information, we're going to see some details in here that tells me that this URL is not actually a location, so I might be able to have some more information there. It's going to give me some guidance, some hints on what problems I might have so that I can be able to go ahead and make the right connection. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and register that. That should be to my DNG system. And in the same case, it's going to tell me what my provisional key is, and you'll see that I'm going to be rejecting the key because I haven't approved it in the DNG system yet. Now, a couple things to keep in mind. DNG is a little bit different. It's the same thing as GC. Normally, what many of our users want to do is they want to come over to the DNG application, and take a look at the consumers that are here, and I can go ahead and do here. And you'll see that, strangely enough, I don't have any consumers here in my RM system. That's because it actually delegates it over to JTS. So if I look over in JTS now instead of in RM, we're going to be able to see that pending request. And so we should be able to see that pending request. That's the C1D31. We should see that over here. C1D31. Yep, there it is. It's rejecting the key unless I come over here and approve it. And so if I come back over here and refresh, we're going to see that we're all approved. And so that's basically the relationships. And when I create connections from Jira back over to my D&G system as well as my EWM system, that's how we're going to make those connections. It's as simple as that. We basically will have those 4 connections for any system. You'll see that with my 606 system, same type of pattern as I had with my 702 system. And that's all you need to pay attention to. Now, the other way to look at it is we're also going to want to be able to create connections from these applications back into our Jira system. And so there's a couple ways to be able to do that. Let's go ahead and take a look at the friending relationships from RM. And we're actually going to go ahead. Let's get rid of this old connection to my Jira server so we can start from scratch here. The way that we make connections out of the IBM tools is the same way as we do it out of Jira. So I can go ahead and add a friend, in this case from D&G, back into my Jira system. The quick way to be able to find what my root services URL is to go over to Consumers tab. You'll see down at the bottom we'll have a root services URL with a nice copy button. Whether you're pasting that and sharing that with your IBM ELM admin or doing it yourself, it is convenient to be able to take that information. The IBM tool is a little bit different. It just wants the root services URL, and I can do Jira, and then I can name this anything I want. I'm doing this based on my server name, and then I can do next. It's going to go read that root services document and say that everything's all good, and it can read that. In this case, I also want to do some examples in terms of I have to put a secret in there, and I can go ahead and create that friend. The same thing is going on here as we saw from Jira to ELM. I can take a look in my consumers here. If I do a refresh, we're going to go ahead and we're going to see that here's my RM request. Here is that EF2E. I should be able to see this EF2E over here. And there's my EF2E. There's my friend, and I need to approve it over here within Jira. So I can go ahead and approve that, and everything is all good and saved and ready for us to be able to utilize this. So this gives you a good sense in terms of the same type of flow goes back and forth. Just remember, when we're dealing with the IBM tools, there's lots of connections to do. The one that's a little bit more complex from the IBM side is going to be our indexes, so that's LQE and LDX. So I will show you a little bit of what to be able to do on that side as well. And so in this case, I'm going to actually look at LQE. I already have a connection to my process resource. I need to actually make it to my change management resources as well. That's all on that first initial slide to be able to show you what connections you need to make. But we can add a new data source. So when we're connecting to something external from the IBM world, we need to do this so we can do a reporting. I'm going to do it based on a root services URL, so I should be able to enter in my URL that I had from the consumer side from Jira. I can put in that URL. What you'll see here is it will go discover the 2 different TRS feeds that I have. One's my CM resource, one's my process resource. When we're working with LQE, we're going to need both of those. When we're working with LDX, all we need is the CM resource. Now, the thing to pay attention to in LQE and LDX is if I have this mistyped. So if I'm missing, it will say no data sources are found. The same thing occurs if I happen to have things like spaces in the front. So just be careful when you're copying that information over that you're using that. And then if you have any other questions, by all means hit our support desk. There are a few things in terms of some of the security parameters around TLS that might be an issue with your system, but we can give you some hints on how to be able to take care of that. But in this case, let's go ahead and look at CM because we already have our process connection. You're going to see it already discovers what that is. Sometimes my browser likes to help me out and add some additional information in here. We want to specify some OAuth authentication details for this data source. And so what you'll see here is it's going to ask for a consumer key and a consumer secret. So this is a little bit different than the friend connection we had before where it did a provisional for us. In this case, it expects a consumer key and consumer secret. The nice thing is that over here in Jira, I can go ahead and add a consumer myself. So this can be my, let's do Miami LQE. I can go ahead and provide a key and a secret. And these are things that you'll have to share with whoever's setting this up. I'm going to want to use a functional resource or functional user, in this case for the tracked resource set. So I want to go ahead and add that new consumer in here. So I'll be able to see that consumer in here. Here's my my new consumer in here. So then I should be able to come over here in my data sources, put in my consumer key and my consumer secret, and I can test my connection. Typically when we have an issue with this test connection, it's because we don't have a key or secret set up or they're not correctly typed in. So go ahead and be able to check those. And then we should be able to just keep these default configuration information that we want and be able to say finish. When that happens, it's going to go ahead and start indexing those data sources and be able to provide those feeds into doing the reporting and things like that. So that's really the basics of it. The other thing that oftentimes people want to see is what's actually in those root services documents. It's actually pretty simple for us to be able to take a look at. In here, if I actually click on this, what it's going to do is actually open up what my Jira root services document is. It's going to look very similar to what's in Doors Next or ETM. Basically, it's an XML document that gives us some directories on. You'll see that here's my tracked resource providers. So this is what LQE was looking for. So it found out that I have CM resources and I have process resources. You'll see that there is some of the OAuth domain information in here on where that domain is, as well as some of the other OAuth request token URLs, things like that. So this is basically just a directory service that these OSLC tools use to be able to look up information, and that way it allows some configuration on the different tools. So hopefully that's helpful to you. Once you're done, you should be able to come back and be able to go through and look at making sure that you have all the right connections between Jira and these 4 servers, as well as between these 7 applications and Jira in terms of friending back from the IBM tools. And then always keep in mind you can be able to do some things in terms of simplifying that. If you're not using reporting, you don't need to do those LQE and Realm connections. If you're not using GC, then you don't have to do GC and LDX. So hopefully that's a good start. If you have any questions, please come to our help desk, ask questions to our team. We're glad to be able to make sure you're successful in what you do. Thank you very much.